Welcome to the Great Shrimp Shoal. Today we're going to get right back into the new acrylic tank that I've been working on, and admittedly it has become more of a project than I had originally planned. I hope you guys are ready for some fast and furious updates. Let's get things started. Make sure to subscribe because remember, I want to become the Kylie Jenner of YouTube shrimp video makers. So we have to get this out of the way first. I was mistaken. This is not the Sea Clear System 2 120 gallon tank. It is, however, the Sea Clear System 2 75 gallon tank. So I was 45 gallons off, and while that is no small amount of difference, this is still a pretty large tank for what would be my next shrimp community. I don't know where I mixed up the tank sizes, but needless to say, I ran with it in the last video that I did. So basically, we're gonna pick up where I left off, and I had let the tank sit outside for about a week or two, and then started to try and clean it out, but it was not so easy. My hands didn't fit into every single one of the smaller spaces, and I really wanted to make sure that I was able to get in there to clean things out. Also, when I tried to lift the entire tank, two things stood out pretty quickly. It's got a really thick front panel, which forms the front and the two sides of the tank. That in itself is something that probably weighs 30 to 40 pounds. Also, the sump had a lot of poop and water still in it, which made moving the entire tank a very difficult process. Nevertheless, I got it into place and set up a nice spot to start the cleaning. After removing all of the biomedia and balls from the tank, I ended up going to get some water and started to flood the tank as I removed the particulates with a siphon. I tried setting up a bucket system where I would first siphon the water and then I could siphon it again out of the bucket into the gutter. And it worked pretty well. It got most of the particulates and it started sucking up the gunk right away. This was pretty speedy and probably made the next steps a lot easier in a certain sense. It took a while to figure out the best way to empty the tank of water again because I couldn't just tilt the tank. It could crack the acrylic. First of all, acrylic is not immune to that sort of cracking. This tank has already been cracked and a chunk of it was removed, eventually to be replaced with an epoxy resin that bonded to the fractured acrylic. The overall stability of the repair seems pretty good, but it's in a spot that makes me worried about tilting or being too rough with the already heavy tank. There are also some small hairline heat cracks in different places around the tank. I think I can fill and polish those with some cyanoacrylate glue, but again, I don't want to treat the tank like it's indestructible only to crack it completely through because I mishandled it. You can see here that the siphon is working pretty well and a lot of the gunk has already been removed, but because of the way that this tank filters the water and returns it to the main tank, it actually was pushing water into the main tank even though I was filling up the sump and cleaning the sump out most of this time. I used a basic soft sponge and some elbow grease to remove all the water spots, algae, snail tracks, snail eggs, and other stains pretty easily. I can already tell that the previous owner had some sort of nerite snails because of the type of eggs that I found littered around the tank. The more and more that I clean the sump, I actually feel that I would like to try and use it instead of a canister filter or something else, but cleaning it is a real worry for me. I have already experienced that with my canister filter and my hang-on back filters that they get slimy and lose their efficiency pretty quickly. I've also become more convinced that when I have a filter that's been left too long between cleanings that it can lead to some pretty significant cloudy water. For this tank, I don't want to leave the sump for too long only to realize that I have to pull it out and empty most of the water and then somehow clean it all while the rest of the tank remains mostly filled. Compounding the issue is the fact that the return for the sump on this tank pumps the water back along the bottom through a series of holes. So, to sum it up, if I wanted to pump out the gunky water in the sump, I'd probably have to cap the return pathway and then flush the sump with clean water that wouldn't destroy the beneficial bacteria. All in all, it seems like a really involved process. Once I had cleaned out the sump, at least to the point where I thought that it was good, I wanted to tilt the tank and remove the water. And in order to do this, I had to pad up one side because I was really worried about the cracks that were on that side. And then I tilted the tank onto the padding. Once I would get the water out, that's when the real fun begins, because the main area of this tank was just as dirty as the sump, and I think it had to do with the way that they cleaned the tank out before letting it go. I was a bit strategic in which side I would choose to tilt the tank out onto, because I wanted the water to go to its lowest point and have a way to evacuate. All in all, I think it worked out rather well. I started scrubbing, cleaning, and rinsing the rest of the tank thoroughly. I didn't see any salt creep, so I don't believe that this tank was used for a saltwater setup at all. And because of this, I don't think that I'll have to do a massive paranoid triple cleaning to remove any potential saltwater fish medication, which it ends up could be fatal for freshwater shrimp in many cases. The overall condition of the tank is pretty good. The dirt and grime haven't damaged the acrylic very much, and it cleans up rather well. It might need a little bit of buffing. And because I'm doing a repair on some of the hairline cracks, I might end up giving the entire front glass a nice polish as well. And right now you can see that I'm getting started on removing the tape on the bottom and the paper, which has actually become quite connected to the acrylic. The glue has failed over time and the paper that backs it has started to break down. Now is as good a time as any to talk about what I might plan on putting inside the 75-gallon tank. I have the forest to think about, and given the way the Rotala has taken over and how hard it is to see the green jade cherry shrimp against that massive green background, I've been looking into where I can place those shrimp next. Like the snowballs in the mountains, I could see adding the green jade cherry shrimp to this new enclosure and temporarily retiring the entire 10-gallon tank until I find something to renovate it with. If I move the jade green cherry shrimp here, I have already thought about what kind of substrate and plants I would like to pair them with this second time around. It makes good sense to choose a lighter sand or clay and forgo the darker colors because they can very easily just disappear in their current setup. The same goes for the rocks and the plants. I have been meaning to attempt to pour my own cement to create a very light colored custom rockscape that still has the porosity, feel, and most importantly, appeal of natural rock. For plants, I would like to keep it strictly to moss this time around with a couple of crypt plants that can stand being planted without substrate. Unfortunately, if I do this, it means that I would need to put fertilizer into the water column, which can cause explosive growth of algae and other bacteria, as well as cause health problems with the shrimp if they contain the wrong chemicals and nutrients. Shrimp are very temperamental to these types of nutrients. I still haven't revealed what big ticket item I plan to add to this tank, but that particular addition is dependent on if I can get the tank up to snuff and keep the cracks at bay. I do not want to give any hints because just even a tiny clue would be enough to reveal the secret, and I don't yet know if that's the path that I will follow. Already with the decorations and the rocks that I plan to source for this tank, I believe that it will turn out to be a very exciting addition to the shoal, including whatever shrimp I decide to try and house there. I'm going to give another pass at the general cleaning of the innards of the tank because a lot of what you're seeing here on the bottom is water minerals and algae that have built up on the inside of the tank. There are also spots where the snails crawled all over, cleaning, and they do a great job at scraping off the surface all the way down to the bone. But everywhere that they didn't manage to scrape, there is a tough film that is harder to clean than expected, and, funny enough, it follows a cute little snail pattern. I keep going back to the return path from the sump. At first it seems like a great idea. It's completely novel to have 10 holes shooting water back across the bottom of the tank, but in practice it could be a problem for the tiny shrimp. Overall, it's something that still has yet to be seen how it will play out in this new tank. And still, the way that it is now doesn't leave me with many options. If I decide to use the overflow, I'm already dedicating myself to using the sump, and then I have to use the return. That's not to say that I can't modify it though. Now is the time to do these types of modifications. I could just as easily close up the holes and drill a bulkhead fitting into the sump and add a return port, which opens up a bunch of new options. I could also drill bulkhead fittings to make adding a canister filter or switching between the sump and a canister filter much more easier. What's not easy is the removal of this darn paper tape from the bottom of the tank. I had been going at it for almost an hour at this point, and I even took a break and came back to it in order to try and gain a new perspective on how I should be approaching it. I didn't want to scratch the bottom of the tank, even though it is the bottom, but I do need to find a better way to do this, so I may leave it here and approach it again from another angle at another day. I haven't yet mentioned this, but if I don't decide to go through with my plan A, I do have a plan B that includes some spectacular new color of Neocaridina with the same dark substrate that I currently use in the mountains. The fluval stratum is amazing, and it has been chugging along for almost a year now, supporting a wide variety of plants, and it keeps the shrimpy residents happy to boot. I would be very happy with a bright new shrimp on this dark background, but we'll have to see how the rehab of this 75-gallon tank goes from here on. Honestly, it's still hitting me. I left the last video concerning this tank totally convinced that this was a 120-gallon monster, and I just have to remind myself yet again that no, this is actually a 75-gallon monster. No less monstrous, but considerably less intimidating, I do think, and a lot less water. Anyway, that is all that I have for you guys on this video. I'll get through the next portion of the cleaning and start prepping this tank for water next. I also have some new footage from both the mountains and the forest, which I'll be going through as soon as possible, so look for that in the next few days. Thank you guys again for showing up and hanging out with this almost entirely non-shrimp video. I hope to see you guys next time, and until we meet again, I hope that you have some sweet shrimpy dreams. Good night.